Hey guys, I'm Yagi Shatini, and today I wanted to go over how I implemented background music in our game Chroma that you could find on Steam. Now, this game is using Wise and Unreal Engine, and it is a roguelike third person shooter. Now, the first thing I like doing when creating any system is to write things down. I always have a notebook near me, and the most important is to know the general overview of whatever you're trying to make. In our case, it's a roguelike, and our levels are going to be loaded randomly, so I can't do any like progressive music, like you might find in a story or narrative heavy game. And as far as the genre goes, that's of course going to be personal preference for whatever you're doing. But for us, we were going with a drum and bass style. We wanted to avoid any of the drops or buildups and just kind of keep that constant energy filled background music the whole time. Now, quick disclaimer, this isn't going to include our boss. Now, that's going to be a little more complex. I'll be doing a separate video for that system. And there are tons of ways of implementing stuff like this inside of Wise and inside of Unreal Engine. So let me know if you would do it differently. And this is just my approach and my take on it. So a little visual representation of what we're doing. Our level will load, whether we're hitting play game or loading a new level, and that's what will post the music. For us, this was through our game mode, and you could do it on the level blueprint, wherever you see most fit for your game. Once you're playing through the level, once you beat our level mechanic, defeat all the enemies, a victory animation will play. That triggers and opens up our shop. This is where the roguelike mechanic kicks in. You pick your upgrades, change your loadout, and then following that proceeds to the next level where the loop continues. Now for the shop, we want to make sure whatever music we're working on at the beginning through the level is the same inside of the shop, since it's all happening in the same place. Now inside of the track itself, I split each one into 3 sections, A, B, and C. They're all very much similar, so don't think of this like a traditional music theory A, B, and C. They're all very much the same idea, same sound, but this just adds a little more variance, and then this will loop through as you're inside of the level. For me, A is going to go to B, or A is going to go to C, and I'm keeping it that simple. You can change connections how you want. That much is easy to change. And then throughout each one, I have the same, what I call ad-libs, just little melodic, rhythmic synth stuff happening in the background to be a little more variance and make it sound a little more fun. All right, so inside of Wise itself, everything with background music happens inside your interactive music hierarchy, of course. Just quick note, this is not going to be a Wise tutorial, so if you do want a little help as far as Wise itself goes, let me know. Or if you have questions, then go ahead and ask in the comments. But in our case, we're going to look into this generator room, and I just labeled this Traumatic Mayhem, but naming won't be important for this. Now, like I mentioned before, each one has an A, B, and C track. My A is going to go to B, and then my A will go to C. And then this whole thing is going to loop. So very simple. I would say this system is pretty much as bare bones as it gets, aside from just posting one audio file and then having that repeat. I think this is just like the next level. So still very simple. All of this is going to happen infinitely. So if you're just sitting there in the menu, or if you're sitting in the shop, or you don't beat all the enemies in time, like everything is just going to loop until you finish the level. So everything here happens inside our playlist container, and this is just controlling what sections play. This isn't going to control any of the parameters that I'll show later. This is just saying A to B, A to C, repeat. Now inside of each section, or each music segment, we have our stuff. Now each of them share the same ad-libs that we were talking about. Now these are just kind of, again, little fun melodies. Things that will play on top. Sometimes they won't play, these blank ones. And then here, sometimes they'll play on the second half of the phrase. Again, just more ways to add variance and not be so, generic and play through the same thing the whole time. So I'll just play a quick second of each A, B, and C section. You'll hear that they're very similar throughout. All right, so they each have a bass stem, a drum stem, and an other, which is kind of some extra synthy things that they had going on. There are no vocals in these tracks, so the other is just random instruments, but all very similar. Again, we didn't want the music itself to change, just to have enough variance. I did go inside of Logic and kind of play around with some of the drum tracks. I added a few beats that, that felt a little dead, and then repeated some sections just to make sure there were no random drops and, dynamic, I guess you could say. So once I had all that set, you just kind of plug these in, exporting to the DAW. And if you're composing this all on your own, it's going to be easier. Just track your tempo. That's like the main important thing, so things loop and repeat properly. Document your tempo and your time signature, but that much is easy enough. So what's controlling the other cool stuff? If we go over to the buses, this is where I have it all actually changing. Every background music is tied to the background music bus, and this is where a lot of my parameters are actually being changed from, so I'm not having to repeat it over every single level. Now, the easiest parameter change, of course, is just, let me play here, player's health. As health goes down, at a low pass. So then, let's say you died, game over screen, but you're just AFK, you put the controller down, this will just continue looping, low pass, so you won't really hear much of it, but it will still be going in the background. That background music volume slider, that's just options. You can mute it or put it how long you want. So if we go over to the Soundcaster session, it'll be a little easier to see the last game state that's changing here. I'm in game, I'm playing, I beat my last enemy, and it's going to trigger me to go into the shop. And that's going to filter over to be more low pass, lower volume. So you could hear UI sounds here and not be too distracting from your choices. Now, this is similar to being low health, so very much the same effect. Once you finish that, the loading screen will play, and then the next level will load. Obviously not the same track, but it'll go on to the next track. And that's about it, right? Very simple implementation. All this is in our game mode. If you look at my events here, my play generator room, this is all it is. It's just playing this track. You could disregard the 173 track. That's just like heartbeats if you're getting low on health, keeping that in time. But that's it. I just play the BGM at the start of the game mode. Once the game detects the game is finished, I post my stop event. And that is it. There's an option to skip your intro sequence, stuff like that. Part of just game itself, this is a catch-all to make sure the music still plays and stops that whole intro cinematic from happening. But this is very simply a start and stop background music implementation here. Nothing is controlling any interactivity between these parts, how it's flipping through. Again, like I showed in the playlist, it is all set A, B, A, C, and just repeats. So, thanks for watching. If you have any questions on the system, ask below. Be sure to watch our next video where I talk about the boss room, where we get into some music switch containers and get a little more interactivity happening with players on screen. Thanks.